Most of the time I call people back.
Right.
I don't respond via email. I call them back because then you can hear tone. You can talk. And you can understand where they're coming from. And they can also understand where you're coming from. And most of the time, if you respond to somebody who writes something with a phone conversation, it gets worked out.
Hi, I'm Meghan Heritage, and welcome back to the Positivity in Practice podcast, where we talk about staying positive in a sometimes negative world. I'm here today with my good friend, Brook Bisonet, and we're going to talk a little bit about all things young bucks.
Yes, young bucks.
Young bucks. So I want to lead in with just tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you come from? How'd you get to Grand Haven? And then why be involved in kids' sports?
Yes. So I grew up in a small town called Parma, Michigan. So it's just outside of Jackson. If you know where Albion College is, it's near there. Spring Arbor University is down there too. So Parma is a farm community just on I-94. Grew up there, I had two brothers. I was the middle of three kids. And sports were a part of our lives. We played all sports that were offered in a small town like Parma, which was, football, soccer, basketball, wrestling, baseball. That's what we did.
Okay, and eventually you end up at the collegiate level, right?
Yeah, so in high school, played football, I wrestled, and then I played baseball, and excelled at sports growing up. My brothers and I were kind of like the defensive guys in Parma. My older brother broke the single season tackle record at Western High School in the game in the career. And then I came through and I broke his game record. I had 29 tackles in one game and broke the career record. And then my little brother came through and he broke the single season record and he broke the career record, but I still have the game record.
Okay.
So we played both sides of the ball. We played running back, linebacker. My dad was a running back at Western. We all wore the number 22. It was kind of a family thing in Parma. And then I was lucky enough after school, I had applied to two schools, U of M, and I applied to Alma College. I actually applied to Columbia University too. They were talking to me about football, and they actually brought me out on a visit. And I got to New York City, middle of New York City, walk on Columbia's campus, and I'm like, wow, you're like really in the middle of New York City. And I went to the game and didn't end up going there. Got accepted to Michigan, got accepted to Alma, and I decided I wanted to play football and baseball in college. So my dream was always to go to Michigan. I always wanted to be at U of M, and I decided, I'd rather play sports. So I went and played football my freshman year and did pretty well. Was Scout Team Player of the Week. So there you have 100 kids on the team, and they're all the way from 22-year-olds down to me, who was 17 at the time I got to college. Wow. My parents had to sign a permission slip for me to play college football because I wasn't 18 until the beginning of September, and we got there in August. So I was there, played football, and you're there with 113 guys on the team, and you're battling. And the way you battle is you play scout team football, and you're running the other team's defense, and you're getting beat up by much bigger guys. So I had made Scout Team Player of the Week 1 week, which in college, if you travel to a game, they only bring 55 guys of the 100. So I was one of the 55 that got to travel to one of our overnight away games and saw things going pretty well in football and decided that I wasn't going to play baseball because I wanted to focus on football, and playing two sports in college was just going to be too much.
So is that what they call a walk-on?
Yeah, so Division III, everybody is really a walk-on because there are no scholarships.
Okay.
There are no athletic scholarships. Now, they do find creative ways to get you money. So my grades were good enough to where I got almost a full ride academically to go to Alma. So everybody is pretty much a walk-on. Now, they recruit you, so they want you on the team, but it's, there are no Division III scholarships.
So they just wait for all of these guys to show up and say, we want to play football and see what they have. They don't go out and scout people to they can't offer them anything, right?
Yeah. So when I was there, it's much different now than it is back then.
Okay.
Back then, I was invited. They send out camp invites.
Okay.
They just blanket people with camp invites. So I actually went to a summer camp at Elma before my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And so they put you through drills, and I got to know some of the coaches, know some of the players, and really like the campus. So that's what drew me to Elma, was going to a summer camp.
And then do your brothers play did they play at the collegiate level too?
Yeah, so my older brother played 1 year at Adrian. They won the MIAA that year.
All the
and
A's.
He was on track. Yeah, all the A's. He was on track to be a starter as a sophomore, and he just didn't like the small school atmosphere. So he transferred to Western Michigan and didn't play football after that. My younger brother played 2 years at Grand Valley. The first year he was there was their second year of their back-to-back national titles under Brian Kelly.
Cool.
So he played under Brian Kelly, who is now LSU's head coach, and got yelled at a lot by Brian Kelly. So he did. He's got a bigger national championship ring than my MIAA championship ring. So we compare rings.
But you still have that high school thing to hold over his head.
Yeah. But he's got 2 other records that I don't have. He broke mine, so.
That's awesome. I know how competitive you are, so I can only imagine Thanksgiving when somebody brings up,
Yes.
So when you're at Elma, you're studying what?
So I was pre-law.
You knew you wanted to be an attorney?
I did. I did know. I had doubts at certain times of trying to just get a real job and go be a pharmaceutical rep for Pfizer.
Yeah.
I applied for that before I decided to go to law school, and they never got back to me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go to law school. So I started out with a political science major, and then I was going to do a minor in business, and I just kept taking all the classes. So I got a double major in business and political science, and really like the business aspect a lot more than the political science aspect.
Okay, so then you obviously leave university and then graduate school, law school, and then how do you get to Grand Haven?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was working for a law firm during law school in Grand Rapids, and I would drive there, and in the summers I'd live in Grand Rapids and work at that law firm. So I was trying to decide between working for the Court of Appeals as a research clerk, which I had an offer there, and going and working for the firm that I had clerked at. And I ended up clerking at that firm. Worked there for a year after I graduated. At that time, I met my wife, Crystal, at a Notre Dame.
Yes.
At a Notre Dame football game. We met through mutual friends. She was living in Jackson because she's from Concord, which is just outside of Jackson. We grew up really in the same area.
Close, yeah.
But never knew each other.
That's so cool.
Knew a lot of the same people, but did not know each other. So we met and got engaged 6 months later. And at that point, I was still working in Grand Rapids. We decided to open up a firm in Grand Haven because one of my partners that we were opening with was in Grand Haven living. So we opened up Guinan Hayes Bisonet in 2008 in the old roller skating rink.
Yep.
And at that point, Crystal and I got married in 2009, and she got a job transfer with Consumers Energy to the power plant. She's an accountant, and worked there for several years at the power plant in West Olive. And then we settled in Grand Haven.
Okay, so when do you make the decision that you want to be involved in kids sports and young bucks and all of that? Was that when so our sons are the same age-ish. Is that when Max, your eldest, got involved?
Yeah, so Max was born in 2011. He's 13 now. He was getting involved in all sports. And being a transplant to the area, we're like, okay, how do you sign up for all these different sports? Baseball's under TCKL, soccer's under, at the time it was the Tri-Cities
League or whatever, I remember that.
The Tri-Cities Soccer, I think it was called TISO. Yeah. And then you had baseball, had another aspect that was Young Bucks, and then I had people talking to us about football, and so it was like, where do you do all these things? Nora was involved a lot.
So many websites, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of websites.
I remember that.
So Max got involved in sports, and then we had Claire in 2013, which was her birthday yesterday.
I know, happy birthday, Claire. Yeah. I got to give her a squeeze the day before.
Nice. And then Anthony was born in 2016. So when Max, really the catalyst to all of this was Max got involved in football. He was playing flag football as a first grader. And at that point in time, I started coaching, and the board was starting to age out. So all the people on the board, their kids are all like juniors and seniors now. Jeremy LaDronca, Jen Knittel, Doug Start, all these guys and ladies, Trish Landcamp, they were all on the board of Young Bucks at that point in time. Okay. Derek Van Galder. So we were in a transitional period where they're like, okay, we needed some new blood on it, and what can you guys... who can step up?
So is it a 501c3 nonprofit at that point?
No.
Okay. And then is it part of Grand Haven Public Schools? I think a lot of people don't understand how that piece comes together.
At that point in time, several of the sports, basketball, baseball, and football were run under NORA.
Okay.
So the North Ottawa Recreation Association. They housed all of the youth sports. Now, each of them had a parent board that ran the day-to-day operations of that particular league.
Okay.
And they handled advertising for registration. Nora handled the back-end stuff. So all the accounting, all the registration website, everything like that, they handled that with the help of Grand Haven Public Schools, who would do like the accounting and stuff like that. So it was really a lot of hands doing all the work, which was great. So I came on the board along with Tom Stearns, Jeff Byer. A lot of these people came on the board around that time. And I got a phone call in 2019 from Craig Bessinger, who is a great friend of mine, city manager at Ferrysburg. Mm-hmm. And he sat on Nora's board. So Nora had representation from each of the 5 municipalities. And he said, hey, wanted to give you a heads up that Nora is going to hand all of the youth sports programs to their boards here soon. This was February, I believe, of 2019. And he's like, so I just want to give you a heads up. You have to figure out how
it's
to
gonna
handle
get weird.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that point in time, I said, okay, we can form Grand Haven Young Bucks football as a nonprofit. We will create a registration website and try to figure this out. So I started doing some research. Dick's Sporting Goods at that time had a free website that you could create your program under. So I did that, created the website, got ready because registration, this was February, registration was going to happen in June. At that point in time, I had all these other leagues calling me, basketball, lacrosse, baseball, volleyball. How are you going to do this? How can you help us? So I said, well, why don't we just create Grand Haven Young Bucks Athletics, make it a 501c3, and then house all of these sports on one website under one program. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did in 2019. At that point in time, each of those had their own parent boards, which they still do. Each program is run by their own board. And then we try in every sport to get the varsity coach involved. So for football, we had, at that time, Joe Nelson was involved. Mm-hmm. And then Mike Farley was involved. And now Coach Beeds, Andrew Biedenbender, is on our board and is really providing the direction for our program. That's something that we want to see from the top down is his program, and we're implementing what he wants to do.
So you put your attorney hat on, you build the 501c3. Is that, because there's two kinds of 501c3s. I know this because you helped me build mine. Mm-hmm. Is that the big one with all of the hoops and all of the things, or is that the under $50,000, right? There's one that where if you don't take in more than
Yeah.
$50,000, it's less
It-
hoops, I guess.
It is now. It's the bigger one because
Okay.
we have so many programs running under us now that our revenues are higher than that $50,000. Now, we run our programs as money in, money out. So
Right.
when money comes in, we have a nest egg for each of our sports, in case you need something. But really, for football, every dollar we bring in, we're putting back into the kids.
Yep.
And that's what we're just trying to do, is trying to build the program in a way that is mirroring what we're doing at the high school level, but at the same time teaching kids the skills of the game, but really how to be better people.
Yeah. Well, the leadership piece of it obviously is
Yeah.
is a huge component, I think, in why people want to involve their kids in it and teamwork.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And these kids, you learn so much more from sports than just how to kick
Yeah.
a ball or how to throw, how to shoot in lacrosse. It's about how do you work together, how do you sacrifice, how do you put in at a time when you might not be playing a lot. What can I do to make this team better? That is going to carry you in life to a lot of different things. That you're the best goal scorer, you're the best tackler. That doesn't matter down the road. We talk about it 25 years later on a podcast
Right.
about how many tackles you make, but really it's what kind of leadership skills did you build? What kind of person did you become during those times of playing, during those hardships that are going to carry you when things get hard in life?
Yeah. What do you feel like the biggest challenge, the program or all of it has overall right now?
So just to kind of give you where we were when we took over, in football we had 125 kids playing first grade through sixth grade.
And this is flag, right?
This is
okay.
flag. At the time there was a tackle component.
Okay.
So it was flag first through second grade, and it was tackle third through sixth grade.
Okay.
And we came in and had discussions with the head football coach at the time, the athletic director, the superintendent about where we needed to go as a program, because at that time, I believe there were 7 juniors playing varsity football out of a school of 1,700 kids.
Right.
And there were a year where we didn't field a JV football team. We had a freshman team and a varsity team. So at a school that big, we got to find ways to bring players back. So what we did is move to a flag program first through sixth grade. And this year was our first year of implementing 5-6 back in tackle, but we also had a flag component too. So that increased our numbers from 120-ish kids to this year we had 350 kids. And right now, our biggest challenge in providing opportunities for kids is gym space.
Yeah.
The school, we partner with the school, and they do a great job of allowing us to use their facilities for a very reasonable cost, because we're providing these programs to Grand Haven kids. Mm-hmm. These are all the students at Grand Haven. We get a few kids from Spring Lake here and there, but this is primarily 95% Grand Haven kids. Last year, we had 2,000 registrations through our website for all of our different programs. And the biggest thing right now is when you have so many kids playing is like, where do you put them all?
Right.
And the school's been great to work with. They give us pretty good priority over any other outside organization because we're not for profit. We're not making money off of this. What we're trying to do is provide opportunities for kids. So our biggest challenge right now is finding space. I mean, right now there's kids that are in 3rd and 4th grade practicing up until 9 o'clock at night just because of gym space.
Yeah, and I certainly have experienced that with my own sons and driving them into Grand Rapids and really late practices and, the bubbles that are back behind Sport House and trying to – and then, I mean, it's cost, right? Because once you start paying for outside facilities – the costs go up, and I know that's something that parents say, well, why is this so expensive? And Sometimes you're paying for coaches and you're paying for refs and you're paying for insurance and you're paying for all of these different things that come into it. So if there's somebody out there in, Grand Haven or close proximity that's got a piece of land to talk to us about or wants to make a sizable donation inside of that space, we're always kind of eyes wide open looking for that opportunity. I wonder, as these programs at the youth level get bigger and bigger, because it's interesting that Young Bucks seems to be growing. The school district itself has been in a decline. How that balance will work out when we've obviously got issues with passing our bonds and millages to be able to build some new infrastructure inside of Grand Haven.
Yeah, if you look around us, you look at West Ottawa, you look at Jenison, you look at Hudsonville, you look at Spring Lake. I mean, all of those communities are investing into their school buildings. Mm-hmm. And right now, we're having trouble with that. And I think things are heading in the right direction. The leadership that we have, specifically within our football program, is building a culture of positivity.
Right.
And I think what your podcast is, right? Positivity.
Yeah.
It is all about being positive and looking for what we can do and not what we can't do. I think where I've always been a person of, all right, this is something we want to do. Like, what can we do to get it done? I'm more of like, I'll figure it out, as opposed to like, you can't do that. So right now, I have in my mind a building for Young Bucks. Now, this building cannot house all of what we do. Right. I mean, the school is still something we need to do. We need to, be able to use the school facilities. I mean, the kids love playing at the school facilities, but there is an aspect of having a building that is a Young Bucks building that doesn't have to be extravagant or fancy, but a place where kids can go if they want to shoot hoops, if they want to throw a football around, if they want to shoot a lacrosse ball into a goal, if they want to drop a batting cage down to hit at the cages without having to pay an outside organization to do that. If we could do that, that's one of my big goals of having this place where kids can go and they can figure out, I can hang out at this safe place, shoot with my friends, and have a good time.
Well, and there's so few things that really, after December, depending on the weather and what the winter looks like and all of that, there's only so many places that we can, shove them outside to be able to do this stuff. So I feel that too. I'm constantly driving my 14-year-old to the Y to work out, or, he's in the basement doing what he can get done there. So I think that one of the things that I love about this podcast is, we're building an awareness around this. I don't think most people know that it's not being, funded by Grand Haven Public Schools or really what's going on at Grand Haven Public Schools. And we were in the Rotary meeting, I believe you were there too, where they were talking about how difficult it's been after the embezzlement and after all of these challenges to be able to get people to invest. And I, as a broker, am always saying your property values are linked to your school system. And so if I get a call from somebody out of, Chicago that's looking to reload for a job, one of their very first questions is, tell me about the schools. So I think that as people think about, it is a 501c3, there is a tax deduction component, but it is very, very difficult, we learned as we were working on this, to find areas that have that recreation zoning. Yeah. You can't just pop this building up in the middle of an industrial park. We attempted to look in that space. So I guess my hope is that either that land becomes available or we can find a way to be able to have a variance so that there's a space for these kids to, it's one of those, like, we could even raise the money for it, but until we've got the seat, that part doesn't really work.
Yeah. And I don't want to downplay what other things are out there either, because, the Y is a phenomenal place, and
I love
kids can go there. I mean, Crystal and I were on the Capital campaign to raise money for that renovation and expansion of the Y. It's just that when you show up and you have adult pickleball being played, which I think is a great thing that they need to have indoor space too. You have a lot of competing things because let's face it, our community is very active.
Right.
There's people of all ages in this community that want to be active, that want to use the spaces. So, Nora puts on a lot of programming that is using high school facilities or the elementaries or the middle schools, and we're competing with those too. So, and we're all working hand in hand to provide opportunities for people to be active. And that's important. I don't want to sit here and say that the youth are more important than anybody else. I think we can all work together, but there's only so much limited space that's available.
Well, yeah, when you start talking about 2,000 kids, and let's say that, even 25% of them want to do anything on one given weekend, it just doesn't soar. I think that's not a either or, that's a yes and, right? So I'm driving my kid. Sometimes he's at the Bubbles Behind Sport House. Sometimes he's on the east side of the state. Sometimes he's in Rockford. Sometimes he's in Grand Rapids. And you've seen it in the MSA is the one that I think the idea, looks a lot like. And I was there on Sunday night and it was 9:00 at night and there were, grown men playing soccer, and there were little kids, and there was a drop-in lacrosse game with kids that I knew from. Some of them were playing at Kelvin. Some of them were former Grand Haven players. Some of them were East Grand Rapids kids, and they just, got some field time and threw their money, I'm sure, in a hat, and off they went.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. That kind of space.
For sure. And, and you see it. We showed up at 3:00 at the Y yesterday, and there's 3 games of pickleball going on, which is great. I mean, people are being active in the middle of the day, and that's good stuff. I don't want anybody to think that any of this is like we're trying to prioritize the little kids to the detriment of anybody else.
No, and I don't think anybody would see it that way. I think that is one of the only multi-generational spaces that we have.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things is I went to a class called Fit for Life because it was the only one that I could fit in to my day. And I walked in, and I think that the average age in the class was about 72. And walked out just dripping in sweat because I realized you can make it whatever it is you want to make it. And then all of these like super kind people are now my besties.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love that my sons are there, and your son is there, and they get to see friends and do all of those things. I think it's all of that, yes, 100%. And then how can we also expand on this so that we're not driving to Norton Shores or Muskegon or Grand Rapids, and there's just more availability. I think that one of the things that is that we share is how moving your body and being involved in team-related sports is good for your mental health and wellness. And yeah, I know you've leaned into all of that. Is the parent involvement, is that enough?
It's crucial. This year we had 57 football coaches in our youth program. 57.
Yeah.
I mean, kindergarten through 6th grade, you have 57 volunteers. They're not getting paid. They are there doing the best that they can to provide opportunities for the kids. And sometimes we come up a little short on our numbers. So this year, Max, my 13-year-old, and Enzo Leclerc coached a K-1 football team. You know how hard it is to coach kindergartners in 1st grade who have never played football before, how to line up and coach football, and then the coach has to be the quarterback? Max and Enzo did that. So these parents, I mean, 57 of them coming out and giving their Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, and Saturday mornings to make things better. And you see it in basketball too. We have a ton of coaches. You see it in lacrosse. I mean, our lacrosse program, parental involvement is so crucial because you look at the numbers in each class, and where there is strong parental involvement, like out there recruiting kids,
right? Yeah,
those numbers are off the charts. Your husband built that at Grand Haven.
Yeah, and that I laugh because we actually had cards printed up at Verdine's that just said, "Come and try lacrosse." And Henry would take them to school. And my younger son is a little bit of the town mayor. And, people would say, well, I don't have the equipment. And then for a long time, a lot of years, we had kind of a deal with the lady on 7th Street that anytime anybody brought in any lacrosse gear, we would buy it all. And just gave all of that away to kids so that we could make sure that they were out there to play and make that sort. I think the cool thing has been in watching the trajectory of my own kids through, the Young Bucks program is having so many different opportunities to meet different kids and play different positions and be kind of all over the place. I know it was a big departure this year for Henry to go from flag to tackle.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts? I know we did the concussion protocol thing, and I know there's a lot in that to unpack, and we certainly couldn't unpack all of that today. But what was the big difference when some parents signed their kids up at Young Bucks for tackle and others chose to continue in the flag trajectory? What do you see that being like as they transition?
I think every parent has to make the decision that's best for them.
Right.
And there's a lot of parents that are like, I'll have my kid play tackle at kindergarten if they could. And that's a parental decision that needs to be made, and I respect whatever parents' decisions are that they want to make. But we have to look out for what is good for the entire program. And what we have seen is the proof is in the numbers as to what the flag program has provided. Now we're trying to adjust a little bit.
Right.
And find out, okay, how can we still provide the numbers, but then have these kids a little bit more prepared for middle school football? Because I coached in the middle school the past 2 years, and we knew that the first 3 weeks of 7th grade football were going to be rough. And then it starts to even out. So what we're trying to do now is provide a little bit of balance to provide some kids that want to have that tackle experience at 5th and 6th grade, and then have them more prepared. Then you bring the other kids along when they need. I think what we have to understand is that kids develop at all certain times.
Oh, geez, yeah, you're telling me.
And kids are ready at all different times. And we have to nurture that in those kids.
Right.
We have to walk alongside them and say, hey, it's okay, you're not ready right now, but let's just continue to learn. Let's continue to grow. Eventually, you're going to hit that growth spurt, or you're going to hit that testosterone boost that's going to get you more aggressive. We'll get there eventually, but what we don't want to do is turn kids away at an early age because all we provide is tackle at that age.
Right.
Because there's a lot of really good athletes or really good players that would never have played had they had tackle. I mean, their parents straight up told me, like, if this was tackle at this age, my kid would not be playing. And so that's why we're trying to provide both opportunities and really change how we do our flag to make it so we're teaching more about what it's like to play tackle so that they can be prepared. So this year we added a kickoff, kick return, extra point element, punting that we didn't have before, so that kids could be ready when they get to middle school. Hey, I need to know how to punt the ball. I need to know how to snap. I need to know how to kick an extra point. So those were things that we saw that were lacking in the middle school from an experience standpoint to try to implement into our younger programs.
Yeah.
So having that cohesiveness all the way through to make sure we're hitting on the right elements for them and making sure that the culture is being brought all the way down through.
Yeah, and you do a good job at that. Like I'm always so incredibly impressed. I obviously know how trying I think it can be. I don't think there's a parent out there that doesn't have something to say about the difficulties that come along with kids sports and the opinions that come along with kids sports and what I call manufacturing an experience for your own child at the perhaps detriment of the team. And so how do you hold your center when, you're doing the absolute best you can? I know a gazillion hours go into this. I watched, my husband be involved in kids sports and the amount of time, energy, effort, money, all of it. And, how do you keep it positive when is somebody's coming for you, or they don't like the way that you did it, or whatever.
Yeah. First of all, in the moment, it's hard, because you're like, man, I'm putting so much time into this, and like, why am I getting so much pushback? But if you step back and you look at it and you say, I have 350 kids that played this year, and I got 2 complaints.
Right.
That's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also look at it and I try to put myself in that parent's shoes. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, if this was me and my kid was experiencing this, how would I want to be responded to? So most of the time that means not responding right away, which is hard if there's a conversation that happens in the moment. But if it's an email or a phone call, typically what I try to do is not respond right away, because I'll write something and then my wife, I always bounce everything off of Crystal.
Right.
Because she is a phenomenal human being, and she has a different perspective on sports than I do. And she just has different, she comes from a different, growing up, sports weren't like sports were to me. So like she can take it in a different context. So, and especially from a mom, like how do I respond, and get her to put it through her filter, But at the same time, most of the time I call people back.
Right.
I don't respond via email. I call them back because then you can hear tone. You can talk, and you can understand where they're coming from, and they can also understand where you're coming from. And most of the time, if you respond to somebody who writes something with a phone conversation, it gets worked out.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot at our house about the difference between response and react, and how the outcome will be completely different if you try to. I always say you can't de-escalate a situation by escalating a situation. And when somebody is hot, it's just really hard when they're back in that reptilian brain not in the prefrontal cortex about how, and it's your kid, right? So I've always really appreciated the way that you process the information and then, go back in with what you feel like is best for the program overall.
Yeah.
Not the individual.
And I'll say, I don't always do it right. I mean, there
Sure.
are times where, you feel like, man, that wasn't handled the right way. And what I try to do at that point in time is go back and apologize and find a different resolution, But I will say this, the amount of good people that are in these programs, the amount of people that step up, the amount of people that say thank you. Mm-hmm. There's so many. And, you tend to always think about the negative, but the positive, there's so much positive out there. There's so many positive people. There's so many people that really appreciate what's going on in our community. So, I that far outweighs any of the negative that happens.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I have to often remind my husband that some kids that are out there that I watch that are just absolutely remarkable would never even play the game of lacrosse if they weren't first in my backyard, or, in what that means to them as they grow up, and the leadership. And it's not just athletics. And I wasn't Sporty Spice. I never in a million years thought that I would be the mom that will drop anything to go watch my kid do something like that. But watching young children, everybody's children, because I cheer for.
Yeah.
I mean, I cheered the other night. Our kids were on opposite teams, and I was cheering for both sides of it. And Jack always kind of rolls his eyes, and I yell, I love you, Adam, to Adam Curtis when he's the East Grand Rapids goalie. And, all the East parents kind of look at me like, we love our goalie too. I'm like,
Yeah.
Not as much as I do. But I think that the long-term effects, I think parenting and dealing with kids in general, it's like you put a cake in the oven and then you get to see what it tastes like 18 to 25 years later.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you for everything that you do. I know that it's sometimes fun to be the guy, and sometimes it's really not fun to be the guy. but watching the trajectory and what you've grown and getting to benefit, into it. I don't coach anything. I financially, Crystal says I need a check and I show up with a check. And that is a way that you can support this program really easily. They always need money for a spaghetti dinner or feeding a bunch of kids in, before a football game. Certainly, going in if you have a coaching acumen or a kid who maybe played before or you played before, and then helping to find, this space. I love the big audacious goal. I think that's how amazing things happen. But
I'll say this though, like you said, you didn't coach or anything like that, but your husband did, and the sacrifice that spouses make when the other spouse coaches is huge, because it's kind of, sometimes left on your plate. Like you gotta do the dinners, you gotta do the running around, you gotta do this. You're out there coaching, like Crystal during football season. I mean, it's all on her because I'm coaching 3 different teams, and so if you aren't the spouse that coaches, you're still doing a lot to benefit the program. And if you're the parent that is just bringing your kid to practice, that's huge too. Like everybody has a role in all of this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, you see the coach or you see this person, they're the one that gets the glory, but it's all the people in the background or that are the support staff for it that make this all work.
Right. I've obviously had many conversations with Crystal over the years of, kids sports and all of that. I think the challenge is, and I believe I've said this before on this show, is when you draw attention, you draw attack. And so in my space, I've always been like, I know that when somebody is out there, they're going to get attacked. So I try to praise as much as I possibly can. And one of the kids that we know that is friends with our older kids said, Mrs. Heritage, I love that you always cheer positive. And for me, I said, what do you mean? And he said, you only cheer positive. You only say like, great job or way to go or ball or whatever's going on the lacrosse field. And I always giggle because my response to him was, I can't do anything you're doing out there. If someone came at me in a helmet and hit me, I would be like, okay, we're done. If a metal lacrosse stick came, our sons come home with bruises up and down their arms, and our kids are big. They're the big ones that are out there, doing that kind of thing. So I appreciate that, whenever we talk about this, you always are like, this is what's going good. This is what's great. This is what's working. Maybe there's some small thing that we're processing to figure it out. I tell Jack, my older son, sometimes you go to learn and sometimes you go to win. And I've never seen you not learn out of one of those situations and double down on bad behavior or a bad decision, and I think you're emulating that to those kids. You always give the second chance. You always say, let me put you back in over here. Let's try it this way to keep them involved. And I'm so grateful because I feel like where we have a space of a mental health and wellness pandemic, we just do. It is a hangover, I think, from COVID and being so incredibly disconnected. It's our plague that this particular generation is facing. You have created a place for people to belong. And I don't think there's anything more important for that, a space where they can come and feel safe and do things and feel good about themselves.
I agree.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you
so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm grateful for so many different reasons for you, but thanks for sharing about Young Bucks. And if you're out there and you are thinking about something that you might want to do as a year-end donation or a beginning of year donation for next year, consider this. If you are now noodling where we might be able to find property or land to sort of put this into action in order to continue this amazing thing that Brook has started and all of these Young Bucks parents and volunteers have started, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
We hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. If you're like me and you're looking for positivity in practice, please like, follow, or subscribe to find more people who are being positive.